The following is this week's recording of our live streams, which take place on Discord. We call these meetings kinship because we realize that the deepest mutuality is not one of biography or biology, but one of ideas. And this is a time for us to discuss the most edifying ideas that come to mind. You can join the Discord community to meet and interact with like minded people via the link in the description. I hope you will enjoy the following discussions. The question of the week, just to remind everyone who also hasn't heard it before, is which is more important, intention or outcome?
Yeah. So for me, if I'm being honest, I think intention and outcome both matter, but in different ways. Like intention shows you who you are and what you are trying to do, and your integrity and your values, like behind the outcome. And outcome shows what actually happened and how the things you are doing affected the world or people around you. So both are important, and for me, I like to learn from the outcome as well. For example, if I'm in a class and if I raise my hand to speak and it doesn't go well, or sometimes because it backfires, because I don't know, sometimes people don't like to uh, hear you talk much or contribute much in class. They think you're disturbing the class or anything, that has happened to me. So sometimes it backfires and you can learn from it, but it has also happened like teachers have come to my side and they say that let him speak, that kind of thing. I hope I didn't ramble much there.
No, you're right, of course, and that's why the question was phrased in that way, where it says, which is more important, right? It's not that
Yeah.
outcome is not important or intention is not important, but which one is more important? And we like to think that, or we see that intention is more important because intention is where we truly have control, and outcome is where we truly don't have control. And so, of course, outcomes matter in the sense that we want to learn from them, like you said. And they also, in many ways, inform our intention going forward, of course, because we react to the world, to the way reality really is. And so it's absolutely true that they're both important, of course, because both are part of reality. But if we tend to see that if we focus on intention rather than outcome, that we are in control, that we are therefore in peace because we say, well, everything that is important is in my control. And all the outcomes from that, they are not my doing, right? Because I'm not in control. How other people react to it, what the world then adds to it, and the outcome becomes. Only my intention is the part of the recipe of the outcome that I am in control of. But of course, I'll eat whatever comes out of it, right? And so you only have to worry
Yeah.
about your ingredient of the pie that is being made, and that pie is called reality. You only have to worry about your ingredient, the freshness, the rightness, and the proper amount of the other ingredients are not up to you. You're not there to
Yeah,
supply
but
those.
sometimes
Yeah.
yeah, but sometimes that also happens. I mean, you may have noticed, for example, uh, I have like you have good intentions, like you have good intentions. You are coming from a good place, like in your mind headspace, but the outcome it backfires, So that happens as well. So I think we need to be careful of the balance, don't you think? Like, I mean, there can be many situations where we have good intentions, but it might backfire. I hope I'm making sense.
Well, it only backfires if you have uh, expectations on the outcome. To value the outcome, to learn from the outcome, and to even take the outcome into consideration does not require you to have expectations on the outcome. When you say it backfires, it can only backfire if you have a certain expectation. If you say, my intention should lead to this, And of course, you intend to do things with an intention towards a certain outcome. Otherwise, that's your planning capability. That's why you're doing the things that you're doing. But at the same time, you do not have to expect that your intention actually ends up in the intended outcome. Those are two independent things. You do your best towards a certain goal, but then you say, whatever the outcome is, it is what it is. I accept it. And so you don't have to see it as backfiring, because even if you have, as you said, good intentions, to call the outcome bad is part of your intention. It's part of what is in your control. You are the one who is making or not making, abstaining from judgment about the outcome. And to just not call someone bad, call something bad that objectively is bad, is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is have no expectation, right? Reality does not do things with a human mind. In other words, when reality does something, it doesn't think I'm doing something good right now, or I'm doing something bad right now, or I'm trying to harm these people, and I'm trying to benefit these other people. That's not how reality works. That's how our human mind works. And so when it comes to dealing with reality, understanding reality, we have to let go of the personal, and we have to adopt the mind of the universe, the mind of reality, to make our wish overlap with the wish of reality. And you can do that and still 100% work on your intention. That's exactly what I'm talking about. Part of working on your intention, focusing on your intention rather than the outcome, is to let go of expectations of the outcome, which is part of your intention. So your work, when it comes to your intention, extends further than you might think. Sometimes we think, oh, I have good intentions, but bad things happen anyway. It was part of the work of your intention to make sure that you don't get disappointed or puffed up by the outcome of your intentions. It was part of that. So don't forego that work. Otherwise, you're still only focusing on the outcome, or rather, you're still not focusing entirely on your intentions. And that's what I'm saying. Truly, when you really properly focus on your intention, you will be at peace, because you will literally be doing the very best that you can possibly do as a human being, as an intellect, with your body, with your mind, everything. And it will be so well and true and proper that you will know that also. You will feel it. And that feeling, so to speak, that knowledge, that state of being is peace. And so if you are still disturbed by certain outcomes for a sustained period of time, we always talk about, the first moment of you finding out a news, there might be some things going on within you that you are not in control of, and it's just going to happen, and there's nothing wrong with that. But to sustain disappointment, to sustain fear, to sustain worrying, anxiety, judgment, disappointment, or again, pride. This was good. This is right. This is exactly what needed to happen, and I made it happen. That you might think that the very first moment you find out about that things went your way, so to speak. But immediately you should catch that and say, just like it would not have been my fault if it had gone this other way, it is also not to my credit that it happened this way. All I focused on was my intention, and the outcome is mixed with much more than just my intention. So I'm not, in that sense, responsible of the outcome either way. What I am responsible for is my intention. And yes, of course, we can be misguided and we can be misled, and we can think that we're having a good intention and that we're working towards something good and focusing on our intention. But in reality, it turns out that we were ignorant, that we were misguided. And so the outcome will only point at our flawed intention. So what I'm saying, in other words, is just because you had good intentions does not mean that you are not responsible of your actions that follow from those intentions, right? Because they're part of your intention. They do come out of your intention. Your actions do come out of your intention. The outcome doesn't necessarily. But you are also responsible for your actions, not only your intentions. And if your intentions, you were misguided in them, you were ignorant, you were confused, then you are still responsible. But at the same time, the best thing you can do is not guilt, is not shame, is not regret, is not anger, is not blaming the world or blaming yourself, but to keep doing the exact same thing, which is to focus on your intention. Right? So there's much more to it than it might seem at first, but at the same time, it doesn't just reveal another dimension. It doesn't just reveal another dimension of responsibility. It also reveals another dimension of control, of power that you truly have. We feel so helpless sometimes, oftentimes, many people almost all the time. And it's because I think they feel lost in this world, the sea of outcomes that are truly uncontrollable in the true sense, but for which they still hold themselves responsible. And that's where sheer anxiety and terror, regret, depression, of course, comes in, sadness, because as we always say around here, the perfect recipe for anxiety is to hold yourself responsible for things that you have no control over. And control in the true sense, right? We say true control is full control. Partial control is not real control. And so in that sense, we're responsible. And in that sense, we're not responsible, right?
Yeah. And yeah, thank you. Yeah, you're absolutely right. And yeah, thank you so much, by the way, for letting me participate. And I appreciate being part of this, questions, answers, and reflecting with you and, giving my thoughts and everything.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
Thank you for your answer, and thank you for bringing up the question of the week. That's what it's there for, to discuss and to gain new insights that we didn't have before and to share them. So I thank you very much for that. I will move you back to the audience. It was great to hear from you again. And always, of course, welcome to be here again. And I will immediately take our next speaker.
Yes, I also wanted to speak about the question of the week.
Yeah, please go ahead.
And yeah, so it's not so much a disagreement, because I hear you speak and I agree with everything you're saying, but I get to this conclusion that they're of exact and equal importance. And that's what I'm hearing you're saying, but I get that the kind of the initial conditions, the things that you're setting out to do, has importance. But I think the thing that we're in the game of here is not about willful intent, but kind of skillful intention. And how is it that we become more skillful in our intent? And when I'm hearing your response and other responses in the discussion, it seems like the way that people are concluding on intention is about either your degree of control, or are you appealing to rationality or emotional, or having an emotional basis to it all. And for me, they still both occupy a space of not being about outcome. So I think that the missing piece of the puzzle is kind of states of mind, or states of your heart. What's the kind of loving aspect to this? And I think if you're someone that's like, your starting point is about from a loving position, you'll be much more have a tendency to be outcome oriented or care about the consequences. And whereas if you're someone that's kind of striving for rationality and peace of mind, your starting point will be intention. But I think if you follow both threads, you'll still end up at the same place, of this kind of place of where outcome and intention are both important. So it's like another way to come at this is like to think that, so if you're going to be of kind of low heart, low mind, I would strike you as my understanding would be you're someone who's kind of very much based on emotions. And the question is, if you're trying to like correct the wrongdoing at that time, you're someone that's going to be trying to correct injustice, and that's going to be your guiding light. And if you're someone that's going to be more on the kind of rational perspective of it all, and you're trying to correct the wrongdoing there, you're going to try and correct ignorance in that situation. And for me, both of those are kind of have this kind of motivational, intentional aspect to it all. Whereas if you're going to be more towards the outcome, so let's say you're of low mind but of high heart, then you're kind of thinking of something like kind of like a care ethics. It's perhaps closer to how parents or nursing professions might operate. It's very trying to minimize harm. And the thing you're trying to correct for in those cases is kind of neglect or stress and trauma and those sorts of things. But then if you're someone that like places equal importance on the outcome and the and the intention, I think it's something more around like effective altruism, right? So it really is about, we've got an objective, there's something we need to try and minimize or maximize, but I'm going to be evidence-based. I'm going to make sure that I'm getting information to support this pursuit. And I think that the best way to summarize that is the Hippocratic Oath, first, do no harm. And for me, that is both an intention and something that's very much guided by the outcome.
Right. But so as I'm hearing you speak, I'm hearing you say that one can be in your words, of low mind or high heart, or low heart and high mind. And you mentioned that either one of those can be your starting point, which then determines if you're more of an intention person or an outcome person. But I would argue that what you are calling a starting point, what you are calling high heart, low mind, etc., that is an intention also. I think your starting point is your intention. Whether you are, as you say, of low heart and high mind, or low mind and high heart, that's an intention. You see what I'm saying with that?
I can absolutely see this, but I think when you're like, and if you're appealing to like, what is a state of mind and what is a state of heart? I think for me, it's really hard. I think it's always a false disambiguation. These are both, we're speaking about states of awareness. And so in reality, they are identical, but for discussion, it's easier to separate them. And for me to understand states of mind, we're talking, it's easy to like, what's your relationship like with silence? Having a peace of mind. And to talk about the states of heart, it's about what's your relationship like with solitude? How comfortably do you sit in solitude? And there's something a bit more in the moment, animate. It's not something that's prepared or systematic about that state of existence. So I don't think intention for me would fit in with that. It's much more reflexive, like I say, in the moment. Whereas if you're of something that's a construct of mind, then it would be intentional.
And I think you're absolutely right when you say that people who are guided by reason, correct me if I'm wrong, if I don't want to put words in your mouth, but people who are of reason tend to focus more on intent, and that people who are more emotional, let's say, tend to focus on outcome. I think that's absolutely correct. But I also think that to be of emotion is an intention, right? And this is why we always talk about, or have recently been talking about, that emotions, coincidentally or not, are exactly those things which push us out of reason, which push us out of awareness. Because whenever we're angry, whenever we're resentful, whenever we're frustrated, or whenever we're proud and ecstatic, we do things that we later either come to regret or say, or realize that we didn't know what we were doing and why we were doing it at the time. However, to give yourself to emotion is also a mode of being, a state of existence, and that becomes your intention ultimately also. Because there are those times when you can see things clearly. There is no reasonable person who's never emotional, and there's no emotional person who's never reasonable. And that's exactly what I mean when I say, when we focus on intent, we have control. When we focus on intent, we have power. Because in our aware moments, we all see that when we're emotional, we lose control. When we're emotional, we're unaware. And so at that point, or at one of those points, at some point, we, whether we want to or not, choose one thing or another. We choose to be of reason, or to let the same thing repeat again with the emotions, to be swept up by emotion. And to me, that's why I say, I think there's more to intention than what we realize. We say, okay, my disposition is more of emotion, so naturally I'm going to, but hold on a minute. I think intention starts there, and maybe even before that. And this is what I call the work of life. This is what I think philosophy allows us to do, and religion, true religion practiced in a true way, is that we become aware of awareness. We know ourselves, as the ancient Greeks say, know thyself. I think to know thyself is to know this very fact, that reason is of awareness and emotion is of unawareness. And that to be of emotion or not is ultimately your choice, which makes it your intention. And
Yes,
yeah,
sorry,
no, go
to
ahead.
respond to that. For me, when I'm speaking of love, I'm not speaking of emotion. I think you know, a true state of love is completely, not of emotion. It's, I think, for me, when someone's making value judgments from an emotional place, I think it's closer to intention than to outcome. I think, they have this kind of intrinsic, evolutionally derived measure of morality, right? Like murder is bad. It's these like instinctive gut instincts around what is good and what's bad. That it has intrinsic
Yet
kind of
all murders
derivations
are
from.
committed in anger, in emotion.
Yes, yes.
And so
And
I don't know about that, that emotions are intrinsic understanding of what is right and what is wrong. I think to not murder is the most reasonable thing one can know. And it's not at all instinctual in that sense. It's become so ingrained in us to know that it is something that we know, but the emotions sweep that knowledge away. I don't think they bring it to us. And I also want to say, I 100% agree with you that love is not an emotion. You're absolutely right. But we still confuse what love really is. Love does not focus on outcome, because love does not expect. And as they said, love does not judge, and love does not separate, and love does not make value judgments. Love does not look at your outcome. Love looks at your intention, right? Because
I think love doesn't even look at your intention. I think it's so in and of the moment. It's that, yeah, you're if you've achieved it in its highest form, I'm far from it. But what I believe is that you're so, responsive to the moment. You don't even have to think about your intentions, right? It's such a it's a bit like acquiring a skill in a sport, right? At first you have to be quite deliberate with acquiring that skill, and then once you become so proficient at it, it's so reflexive that you're not even having to care about your intention.
very interesting, very interesting. And I see what you mean now, and I would actually go together with you on that, and I would actually go further, because you know what, you're right. When you truly give yourself to love, you become of love, right? And so you don't even have to think anymore. It's true.
Mhm.
But I think that's not love taking over, but you giving yourself to love entirely, and you making your intention the intention of love. It, like I say, when you make your will overlap with the will of reality, you will never be disappointed. right?
Mhm.
And when you make your intention overlap with the intention of love, you can never go wrong. And you're absolutely right. And I think the same goes for truth. If you give yourself, and this is what essentially all the religions, all the philosophies are saying, right? Now we're, again, thanks to the discussion that you brought up here, are once again are able to reach down to the very essence, the spirit, the truth underneath all religion and all philosophy and all genuine truth exploring ways of thinking, which is that when you give your own self entirely over to truth, and not even call it intention anymore, attention or awareness or will or anything like that, when you give your own self entirely to truth, to justice, to love, to goodness, you cannot go wrong. And that's what I mean with peace. That's literally what peace is. To not be able to go wrong. When you know you cannot go wrong, what is a more peaceful state than that? Not only when you know it with your mind, but when you see it, you believe it, you live it. And so you're absolutely right in that sense. The only thing I would say is that someone who has given themselves truly to love and to truth and to justice, like we said, and has made themselves one with them, has made their intention one with them, I don't think would focus on outcome in the sense that, of course, do no harm, but it's only people who confuse love with care, who think that they are responsible of the outcome, or that they have any true control, and that intention is not everything. Because whenever we hold ourselves responsible for anything other than outcome is when we get angry, is when we get resentful, is when we get disappointed, or again, ecstatic and prideful and all these things. And you're right to mention mothers, but we must not confuse the physical, so-called profane realm with the realm of ideas, or with the spiritual realm, whatever you want to call it. Because motherhood, fatherhood, friendship, all these things, these are physical duties and they're physical acts. Of course, a mother is responsible of their child so long as it is a child, physically and legally. But in spiritual responsibility, she is not responsible of outcomes in that sense. These are two different things. Physically, 100%, of course. A mother needs to do everything. And one can't just say, if the child gets, again, physically injured, that's nothing. Of course, it's something to be dealt with and something to be done. But in the spiritual realm, if one sees duty and responsibility outside their intention, it leads to anger. It leads to hate, and it leads to resentment. And as you know, anger begets anger, and violence begets violence. And this is why we're in this mess of thinking that there's such a thing as righteous anger. Because, as you know, every single time people fight, they don't fight because they have wrong anger. They fight because they think they have righteous anger. And every single time people justify their righteous anger, they think they're justifying it by saying, this is for my family, or this is for my country, which is the same kind of love and care confusion, or this is for my culture. Same thing. They make physical things, and they make physical things justifications for their spiritual anger and their spiritual intention. And so we have to keep those, in my opinion, we have to keep those things separately. Whenever we don't, we fall into that. Whenever we don't, we fall into fighting, physical and spiritual, and we fall into major resentment and bitterness towards the world, which is literally the opposite of peace. Anyone who has anger cannot have peace. Anyone who has resentment cannot have peace, which is the same thing. Anyone who has hate cannot have peace. Anyone who is disappointed cannot have peace. Anyone who has pride cannot have peace. Anyone who is feeling very, very good about themselves actually cannot have peace, because it immediately comes with the danger of losing it, which is not in your control because it is an outcome. Your good reputation is an outcome, not in your control. Your bad reputation is an outcome, not really in your control. So does that make sense? I completely agree with you, what you're saying about love, that love is actually not at all an emotion. You're spot on that. And that if we truly, well and truly give our intention and make it the same, identical to love's intention, that we cannot go wrong. I only disagree with the that it would make us focus on outcomes in the sense that I described. Maybe you didn't even mean it that way, but
Yeah, no, like I said, because I wouldn't even call it a disagreement where we were. Everything you're saying seems quite aligned. Like I said, yeah, I think the love springs from awareness, from observation, and for me, that's the closest thing to outcome in that degree. Otherwise, I think very aligned in how we see it.
Yeah, no, that was excellent. Thank you for bringing that up. That was just very, very important, actually.
And thank you so much. You've built an excellent community here, and your videos have been a great source of help for me. So thank you so much.
I appreciate it. Are you here for the first time? I don't think we spoke before.
No, this is my first time. Yes.
Oh, very
yes.
nice. Okay. Well, again, thank you very much. You say this is a valuable community, but it is exactly people like you, creating discussions exactly like the one you just did, that make this place valuable. So it truly is, you yourself are the very source of the value that you are seeing here. And I thank you very, very much. That was very valuable to me, and I think to everyone else, as universal and timeless things tend to be. And that's why we try to focus on them. And thank you for speaking up. Again, I tell everyone, we all are dealing with the same questions, with the same so-called issues, so-called problems, and the solutions are the same too. And so this has once again, I think, demonstrated that to all of us. And I hope you feel very welcome here. I hope you feel you see that the clean and respectful space that this is. And of course, you are very, very welcome here, and I hope to see you around.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll put you back to the audience. Again, very grateful for that. Thank you for those ideas. That was excellent. And I will invite our next speaker. The next speaker has asked to remain anonymous. However, I thought that our discussion was very valuable and would be helpful to many other people who are dealing with the same issue. So I decided to summarize the parts in which he's speaking and thereby preserve the discussion that we had. And the following is that summary. The speaker starts off by first giving context. They say that they used to be a very angry person, but through the act of contemplation and philosophy and then journaling have found their own unique way to deal with the effects of anger. The speaker then goes on to say that they implemented the same method with their current challenge, which they defined as lust. The speaker then goes on to say that through the journaling practice, they tried to find a similarly personal connection to why to avoid lust, and that the commonly giving reasons that it is looked down upon by society was clearly neither an effective nor a proper reason. The speaker says that eventually, through their journaling, they came to the idea of master and slave, and that lust is like the master, and that the person who gives in to lust becomes a slave. In other words, that their freedom is taken from them and their peace along with it. The speaker then goes on to ask, essentially, if they're on to something here. I think it's done. I think that's it. You've seen it. And this is, again, I want to point out to everyone, this is the method and the result and the benefit of the work of life. You read in the right way. You wrote in the proper way. And the result you've gotten is to your true benefit, which was to see that whenever lust or any other emotion gone extreme, because there's nothing wrong with emotion. What's wrong with emotion is when they become passions, as the ancient Greeks used to say. And I think that's such a correct word. Nowadays, we only use the word emotion for talking about emotion positively and negatively, and it gets confusing. The problem are not emotions, it's the passions. Meaning, when you see, I don't know, two little puppies play together, the joy that you feel from that, there's nothing wrong with that. But the ecstasy you feel from, I don't know, two people doing violence on each other, whether it's in a sport or on the street, those people who love watching that kind of stuff, they're thrilled by it. They're consumed by it. They get ecstatic. They start shaking. And that's a passion. And so both are technically connected to joy. It's happiness in a way. But one's emotion and the other's a passion. That's grown to a passion. And that's the problem. And lust is, I don't know, let's think about this. We've never talked about this before. Is what emotion gone extreme? I'm not sure. Perhaps just affinity, right? We feel affinity to people. As we always say, the truest affinity is an affinity based on ideas, right? But of course, we are also animals in the sense that we are biological, we're physical beings. And so there's also affinity based on physicality, right? And there's nothing wrong with that either. That does not push you into unawareness. It does not make you, again, go unaware and do things that you regret or that you simply see as a waste of time. It does not put you out of control of your own life, as you correctly found out through your journaling. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with affinity, whether based on ideas or physical, biology, whatever. But lust is a passion. It's affinity gone mad, literally, right? And so that's why you don't want lust or any other passion, because it's whatever its source is gone mad. And when it sweeps you, you go mad. In other words, you go insane, not sane. And what is to be not sane? To be not sane is to be not aware. You are awareness. You are not your body. You are not your lust. You are not your passions. You are not your goals, your dreams, your wishes, your past, what happened to you in yesterday, what people did to you a year ago. You're none of that. What you are is your attention. As I always say, you are the one who is listening to me right now, when you are listening. And I am the one who happens to be speaking right now. That's it. That's all you are, and that's all I am. And the passions push us out of what we are. And it's sort of like living your life, but you've forgotten to hit the record button. Life is passing by. You're alive. The world is happening. The world's not stopping. The world's not going blank. You are going blank. You are alive, but you're not living. That's what lust does to you. You will always be alive as long as you're alive, but you will not be living. Whenever you are swept away by passions, by those emotions, you are alive, but you are not living. You are not aware. And life literally passes you by. So again, just like you said, it is not because society shuns it or judges you for it or anyone else. It is not because you think it's immoral. It is not to have more time to accomplish more physical career goals or any other goals. No, none of that. It is simply because it doesn't serve you. You have however many years on this earth, you want to be aware for most of them. If the movie is 2 hours long, you want to record all of the movie, not just little parts of it so that you can watch it later, right? You want to record as much of the movie as you can. And so if lust is one of the things that take your finger off the record button, that's why you don't want lust. No other reason. There can be other reasons, but this is the core. This is number one. This is the highest. This is it. Everything else is either just yet another proper reason or not even a proper reason at all. The speaker now goes on to say that my mention of the phrase life passing us by has reminded them of another passion of theirs, which was ambition. They remembered that during an intense period seeking certain worldly achievements, that the years that they engaged in doing that flew by, and that there was great stress and anxiety. And that since discovering philosophy, that they have been much more aware, and that they in fact have dropped their ambition, and that life in that period of time has felt much fuller, like as if much more happened during that time than it used to. The speaker then goes on to say that, funny enough, as soon as they dropped their ambition, they actually achieved all the things that they were struggling to before much easier. And that's why ambition is a vice too. Do you see what I mean now? All vices are of unawareness, and all virtue is of awareness. This is why we want to stay away from the vices. This is why we want to be with the virtues. Not because it is sinful to have vice, not because it gets you into heaven or pleases God that you're virtuous, or it pleases society. No, because vices make you go unaware, and virtues are conducive to your awareness, to your life, to your being as a full, proper human being. And again, coincidentally, or not so much maybe, all vice is of emotion. Again, nothing wrong with emotion, but when emotion goes into passion, it becomes vice, or rather the outcome is vice. And just like a very, very insightful person last week said, all virtue is intention, and thereby all vice is outcome. Right? Your intention, therefore, can be good, and the outcome can be whatever, but vice is always an outcome. It's never anything else. And so these are the reasons, because vice is of unawareness. Vice is outcome, which is out of your control. And vice is of emotion. And virtue is of awareness. Virtue is of reason. And virtue is intention. These are the respective reasons why to stay away from vice and why to go with virtue. And until we understand this, we will not be virtuous. Okay? You can practice your religion as much as you want to become virtuous, which is what your religion is telling you, by the way. But it is not at all anymore giving you the reason and the tool, the why and the how to become virtuous. Because it is always either to please God or to get into heaven, which are the wrong reasons. God does not need us to please God. And to go to heaven or hell is an entirely selfish thing, right? And so even God does not want you to practice virtue for God's sake or for religion's sake or for society's sake, but for your own sake. And it's rather a decision that you do for yourself. If you want to be aware, then go with the virtue. Go with awareness. Go with reason. Focus on your intention rather than outcome. If you don't want to, that's fine. No one cares. God doesn't care either, right? Because God does not judge. And if you don't like the word God, the universe, everything that there is, the all, reality, does not judge, doesn't care in that way. You give yourself whatever you want to give yourself. And if you don't, that's fine too. There's literally, as you can see, no one keeping you. Otherwise, you would not be able to fall into vice. If God cared in that sense, God would not let you fall into vice. He's the God, the way we conceive it, certainly has the power to not let anyone even think of vice if God wanted to. And in the same way, in the universe, we cannot go faster than the light of speed, for example. That's not something that's given to us. In the same way, it could be that we could never make a viceful decision, never fall into vice. It could be. But it's allowed. It's possible. Because it needs to be a choice. Because when you're not making a choice, you're not being aware. To fall into virtue or to fall into vice and to have no other choice would not be a virtuous thing. The choice is what makes it of awareness. To fall into something is not something we do out of awareness. And so if we fell into virtue, we would not be aware either. But the whole point of virtue is to be conducive to awareness. And I thank you for this discussion. I'll move you to the audience just for time purposes here. And but again, very grateful to everything you said. Thank you so much. And before I forget, let's remember this moment that we just had with our speaker here, when he said that when he stopped being ambitious, when he let go of his ambitions, was actually when he performed better in his studies. And since then has actually been on a much better so-called career path than he was before, or than he otherwise would have been. This is the most amazing thing about the vices. They do not even keep their promises. They ask you to worry, to have fear, to be anxious, to be jealous, to be envious, to want for things, to never be satisfied, to always do more, 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 and then they don't even deliver the very reward that all this work was for. Because ambition, no matter what it makes you do, whatever you get as a result, you only want more. That's ambition. Ambition never stops. Ambition never says it's enough. That's the whole point of ambition. Yet on top of that also, though, that which it requires, that which it lusts for, more often than not, it doesn't even give you. Because it puts you in a mind space and makes you behave in a way that makes you yourself fall out of the very things that are required to get that goal, to achieve that goal. Right? For example, patience is always a useful thing, especially when you're trying to achieve a goal. What's more important than patience most times? But ambition is not patient. And what is more important than when you achieve, maybe not your goal, but a very important step in that goal, that you are able to take a moment and say, wow, how amazing. Look where we came from and where we are. This is such an amazing privilege and a beautiful thing that we've achieved. But ambition doesn't let you do that. Ambition say, you can't rest. You didn't achieve anything yet. What are you doing? Let's go. And it doesn't give you a moment to appreciate, to be grateful for anything. And this is what I also would like you to see about the vices. Vices never keep their promise. Everything they say is a lie. They make you go unaware, and all your life passes you by, literally. And so well and truly, there's not a single reason to give yourself to vice, not a single reason to give yourself to pride, to ambition, to greed, to lust, to anything like that. Any single passion is what ruins you. Ambition does not make you, it ruins you. And everyone who is concerned with making something of themselves are in fact destroying themselves. And so this is the very fundamental core and the most selfish reasons you could possibly have to not fall into vice and to let go of all of it and to be a virtue. It is not to say, oh, I'm so virtuous, I'm better than everyone, or I'm getting better myself, I'm working on myself. No, it's none of that. It's the simple desire to be at peace and the simple realization that peace is at arm's length. It is not at the end of a 30-year-old career. It is not at the end of some dating app. And it is not at the end of looking a certain way or doing certain things. It is right here, right now. And ambition and greed and all these pride, all these other things that govern us, if we let them, obstruct the vision of peace being at arm's length. And they generate the illusion that it is somewhere else and far away. There's well and truly simply no need for any of that. So that's the reason to let go. No other reason. And I'll take our next caller here right away.
What I want to talk about today is the relationship between reason and emotions. I know you talk about this a lot, and I apologize if you had to repeat your words. And I watched recently one of your older videos that it's called "Disagree with the World," and you talked about reason. And I mean, I used to be one of those people who are so intense, and I like chaos in my life in order to function and do things. And I mean, and as I grew older, I realized that that's not the life I wanted. And when I discovered your channel, one year and a half, I guess, and you've been a great help for me. And I kind of tried to fix a lot of things in my life in order to live a peaceful life and get out of the chaos and stuff. And also and that's been great. I've been working on myself a lot, and I always, every time I try to take a decision, I always write off the cons and pros about it. And that kind of created a little bit of conflict around me and the people in my life, because sometimes I'm being selfish or arrogant, because I don't take decisions based on how I feel, but how that decision makes me feel and how I see myself in the long run. And this discussion about emotions came up a lot in the chat. And this girl, I think Leslie, she mentioned kids, and that she said that if she relied on reason, she wouldn't have them, because it requires a lot of vulnerability and sacrifice. And what I want to know is, and I'm one of those people who I really don't want kids. I'm in a stage of my life that I'm 33 years old, and I don't feel like I want them, because the reasons that I have of not having them are stronger than the reasons that I want them. So, and that puts me in a situation where I'm being selfish. And what I want to ask is, uh, I want to know if sometimes taking decisions based on reason can sometimes prevent us from experiencing some beautiful things in life that would sometimes require some sort of vulnerability and sacrifice. That's my question.
Well, I'll give you one answer to that directly, and then we'll get into it deeper, because I feel like this answer that I'm going to give you at first is not going to be satisfying, but I do want to say it, which is that
It's okay.
yeah, but and like I said, we'll talk about it and we'll get there eventually. But what I want to tell you is, if reason ever leads you to something where you miss out on beauty, on goodness, on anything that is properly and truly good, then it wasn't reason. Okay? And because we can be misguided, right? Just because you think reason tells you something it's not always the case that that's actually true. We can be wrong. We can be ignorant. We can just not have all the information and reasonably make the wrong decision. Like, all the information we had was pointing towards something, but we were just missing information and there was no way to get it. And so we did our best. But if reason ever leads you to an unreasonable place, it wasn't reason. Okay? And that can happen, and that's okay. But that's what I always mean. Reason would not lead to anything unreasonable. And to miss out on beauty, to miss out on anything that is well and truly properly good for you as a human being is not reasonable, because that's not reason then. Reason does not lead you there. That's the whole point of reason. As we talked about before, emotion, or rather the passion that emotion can get to, is something that makes you unaware. And reason is just something that is awareness. Reason is awareness. So when you partake in reason, you are partaking in awareness. You are being aware. So that's all that reason is. Don't confuse reason with mathematical logic, because logic depends on information. Reason depends on knowledge, wisdom, truth. It's two different things, right? They can overlap. Of course, it's very reasonable to look at things logically, often, very often. But they're not identical, okay? So when you say that you might be called selfish because you never operate on feeling, that is not necessarily at all a reasonable thing to say. A reasonable thing to do is to not operate only on logic, but also sometimes on intuition. That's reason too. And so you don't need to make pro and cons list about everything. It can be helpful, and so you can do it. You're of course free to do it, and it is reasonable to do it. But it doesn't have to be your only consideration. And it's not always possible to make pros and cons lists, because like I said, we don't always have all of the information. So sometimes if we do have to make a decision, we have to make a decision the best way we can. And it's far from ideal, but it's the best way we can. Reason tells you to just make the best move that you can, not to make the best move, period. Okay? Because that's not always open to you. And reason would never require you to do something that you are unable to do, that is impossible to do. That would not be reasonable. And so what we need to do is to, as the ancient Greeks say, know thyself. The more you know thyself, the more you know yourself, the more you will know the nature of reason. Because humans are of reason. And the more you will know what is under my control, what is not, what is proper for me, what is not. But certainly the direct relationship of reason and awareness. If you think of that constantly, or every time you're confused, it will guide you. Okay? What pushes me into unawareness and what is conducive to me to get into or remain in awareness? That is what reason does for you. That question itself is reason already, and then the continuing of that questioning until you get to a result is reason itself. And again, reason is not necessarily logic. And so when we say that to have children is not reasonable, that depends on the person itself. It might not be reasonable for you or for me, but it might be reasonable for someone else. I don't know. Reason does not tell you to judge. Reason does not tell you to look at things from other people's perspective, because you can never have all of the information. You can never really truly look at anything from another person's perspective. So if you just think about yourself, then only then can you truly be of reason, because anything else is unreasonable. To judge other people by your knowledge, by your experiences, by your standards is wrong, because it's unreasonable. And so when people call you selfish, they are also being unreasonable, because they don't know you. No one can know anyone truly, right? And they have no right to tell you that you're being selfish, because that's a judgment they're making on someone else. They also have no right to tell you that you're such a selfless, amazing, beautiful person. They also don't have the right to tell you that. I mean, they have the right to tell you, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't require you to do anything. And so the very fact that you are concerned, if you are concerned, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but it sounded like that, with being deemed by others to be selfish or anything else, is an unreasonable thing to do. So always you can look at yourself. Reason never requires you to get other people's approval, or to live according to their requirements or their wishes. It always turns the focus back on you, because there you always have work to do, and there you always are in control. And you are not responsible for anything else. Does reason not tell you that other people don't get to require anything of you?
Yes. Yep.
So
You're right.
then why not stick with reason? If reason tells you that other people have no right to require anything of you, and that you have no right to require anything of other people, of course, then why care about other people's requirements?
I mean, maybe I'm for myself, like, maybe I'm the one who thinks that I'm being selfish towards other people.
Well, you don't get to do that
I
either.
mean, they might not say it to myself.
But you see, that's just another thing, another unreasonable thing that you are doing then. You don't have the right to think of yourself as selfish either. I mean, I guess it's for yourself, so you do have the right, but what's the benefit of doing that?
I'm punishing myself in a way.
Did reason ever ask you to punish yourself?
No.
Do you see that when you truly listen to reason, reason will never make you do anything unreasonable?
You're right.
Because reason never told you to punish yourself. So if you are now punishing yourself, that is not because of reason. It's actually the opposite. It's because of unreason, unawareness. It's the opposite of what it's telling you to do. Or rather, you're doing something that it not at all speaks about or requires you to do at all. So that's just a way that the very almost obsession about thinking what is reasonable, what isn't, has made you come out of reason. And that's okay. This is the way you realize that. And then it doesn't happen again. And you're sort of fortified against this particular way of falling out of awareness in the future. That's great. I always say, we need to thank our guilt, our shame, our regrets, our anger, our everything that we think is bad, because without it, we would not have seen that it is wrong. And so now in the same way, you can thank that part of yourself inside of you, or that thing inside of yourself, which made you punish yourself against reason. Because now you see how and why that is unreasonable. And as soon as you know the how and why of something, you won't do it again, or you will do it again because it's the right thing to do, whatever the case is. So you don't need to worry about being selfish or this or that, or what other people are saying, or what this part of yourself, which has never told the truth to you, always has lied to you, is saying. All your work consists in knowing thyself. And since you are of awareness, since you are reason, essentially, you are just further exploring awareness, reason. That's all your work is. You don't need to satisfy anyone else or even yourself, what you think may be yourself, that part of you that looks for punishment, or that part of you that judges yourself as well as other people and says, this is right, this is wrong, this is bad, this is good, or asks you, how much longer will you suffer this? How much longer will this go on? You will never come out of this, and all these thoughts that it gives you. Your work is in seeing that you are not that, and that you are what remains of when you let go of your judgments, your expectations, your opinions, right? All these things. I'll say it again, like we said in this conversation, and say, or in this kinship, as we say in any other kinship, pretty much, you are that which is listening right now when you are listening. That's all you are. And reason is there to guide that one particular thing that you are, your attention. Whenever our attention is guided by reason, we live the way we want to live. Whenever our attention is guided by the passions, the excessive emotions, by distractions, by fear, by anxiety, by anger, that's when we are unaware. And that's when we are having a truly terrible experience in life. And so why not constantly remind yourself what you truly are, or rather what you truly are not? And then to say, this little thing, this little attention that I am, who should it listen to? Awareness or unawareness? If awareness, then reason. And if reason, what is reason truly saying? This last sentence, or these two last sentences of what I just said, that's all the work. That's it. And we always say it's not easy, but it is simple. I mean, what can be simpler than to realize that you are nothing? Not your past experiences, not your future worries, anxieties, dreams, wishes, goals, the things that people have done to you, the things that people think about you, that you're none of that. That all that you are is this attention that listens, that watches, that observes, that speaks if it does speak. And to then go on to ask only one question: what does reason tell me in this moment? Not what would it tell me in 8 months if this happened instead of this. But what does it tell me right now in this present, actual, real moment in this situation? And if you focus on that, you will always know. I'm not saying you will know immediately, but sooner or later it will lead you to the knowing of what to do. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does make a lot of sense, and thank you so much for your insights and wisdom. It's truly like amazing every time like somebody asks a question, or you come up with the most like wise answer, and thank you for that. I really appreciate it.
But you know all of this. Everything I said, everything that you say is so wise and so amazing and all that. It's all inside of you. It's the same thing that you have. It really well and truly is. Once you get rid of the distractions, and I'm not even saying I've gotten rid of all the distractions. I always say regularly, of course, I fall into awareness all the time. I'm ignorant all the time. I'm misguided often, and I'm distracted often, and all these things. But I always say there's a desk, and if there are too many books and objects and things on it, we cannot put our work down on it and get to work. We can't do it. So we need to clear the desk first, right? And I'm not saying I've cleared the desk entirely, but it's just clear enough so that I can put some work on it and get something done and see certain things. And that's really all it's about. And you have the same desk, and it's always the same clutter that we're all dealing with. And I always say the friends that we call friends here, the people whose books we read or who we talk about and who we take a lot of our suggestions from, are our friends, and they tell us nothing other than how to clear our desks. That's it. That's all they're ever concerned about. And if anyone is ever concerned about anything else, they're not our friends. And we always say the same thing in very different ways. A true friend is someone who makes you remember. Remember, you must clear your desk. Remember, there's work to be done. And remember that you have this desk. And remember that you cannot use it only because of clutter, not because of some fundamental deficiency that you have. Right? And this is what a friend is for. And so if I remind you of that, and I become a friend of yours through that, that's all I'm doing. But you have the same thing. So, and you can remind yourself. And in fact, that again is yet another way of talking about the work of life, to remind yourself of timeless and universal truths. You can do it. There's not a single, and in fact, you are doing it. I'm not even saying, I shouldn't even say you can do it. You have been doing it. I mean, I've seen the insights you share and the things you talk about. It's clear as day that your desk is very clear already. Sometimes we focus on the clutter that there still is, and we forget, again, unawareness of the space that we already have. Sometimes we have to focus on the cleared space more than the clutter, because that's why we cleared that space, so that we can use it. So don't worry about selfish, selfless, all these things. You know for a fact what true selflessness is. True selflessness comes from true selfishness, because the very best thing that you can do for others is to work on yourself. There's no better mother, father, sister, brother, friend, insurance agent, firefighter, policeman, teacher, pilot, anything you can imagine, than one who works on themselves. And so that's the best thing you can do for others. But you don't do it for others. You do it for yourself. It just happens to be that the best thing, the highest good, is the best thing for yourself and for others. But that's not why you do it. And so you know all these things, and I know you know all these things. So all you have to do is recuperate your attention. Know what you are, know thyself, and then know what to listen to. And you always know what to listen to when you give yourself the space and when you get away from distractions, right? So I hope that made some sense to you. And was there anything else you want to talk about or share?
No, that's it for me. I'll get my questions.
Okay, thank you so much. And that was a great question. I really appreciate it, because once again, the clutter is all the same, and the way to clear it is all the same. It's the same for everyone. And so we all benefited from that. Now we'll immediately invite our next speaker.
Hi to everyone.
Hi.
You can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hi, this is my first time.
Welcome.
This is my first time here on Kinship. I follow you on YouTube since like a year ago, and sometimes I do share my thoughts there, and also I have your email subscription newsletter.
Nice.
But yeah, this is my first time here, so I wanted to say hello to everyone and to thank you for this Atesh, for this experience and for letting us express our uh, thoughts. Um, in my humble opinion, so on the question of intention being and the outcome, I think having good intentions makes us virtuous, regardless of the outcome. However, when the outcomes of our intentions do not align with our expectations, it is natural to feel disappointed. This is my main personal thoughts on this. We should strive to apply reason and avoid letting emotion cloud our judgment, so we can have inner peace. But when it comes to love, for example, I think this is my main point. Uh, it makes us more vulnerable. And how are we to apply reason when we love someone? That is my question.
Well, thank you for your answer. First of all, I think you're absolutely correct when you say when we focus on intention, we are virtuous, and there's no way around it. Yeah, it's truly it's an amazing insight, and one that no one talks about amazingly, even though it's so it wins you over to virtue. It finally gives you a sense and a purpose
Thank you.
why to do this virtue thing, right? All religions say virtue, 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 and the philosophies, right? The Stoics and everyone. But why and how? This is why and how.
Yes.
But so explain to me how it makes it more difficult to be reasonable when we love someone.
Because it is automatically mixed with emotion. I mean, um, we respond to another's actions and ways of doing with our hearts than our brains. And sometimes it gets mixed. I mean, there are times when I would prefer to act by reason than by emotion, let's call it, or by feeling. I don't know if what word is best here to apply, but I don't know if I'm making my point clear. Maybe no.
No, you are.
Because
We
when
just want to talk about
we
it more to sort of understand what exactly to talk about, right? But
Mhm.
well, certainly, if you want to act by reason, but you're overcome by emotion, then yeah, it will be. That's exactly why to understand the nature of emotion and how to not let them get out of control. But to love someone does not make it harder to be with reason. It makes it easier because love is not an emotion. Did you hear me say that before?
Yes, yeah, and I also saw your video on that, and I kept thinking about it. Love is not an emotion, but we tend to, at least I speak for myself, act out of in an unreasonable way if I love someone.
That's because you're
I
confusing
mean,
love with
I
care.
find mm,
See,
okay.
when people say, you are my friend, you are my sister, you are my wife, my girlfriend, you are supposed to care about me, meaning you're supposed to sacrifice for me. You're supposed to show me attention. And if you need to do something unreasonable to demonstrate the so-called love that you have for me, this attention, this care, this support, then so be it. That's what I require of you. But when they say that, they require care, not love. Because as you know, as we all know, love doesn't make any demands. And love doesn't ask for sacrifice. And love would never want you to go into vice to prove itself to someone. And love never asks you to prove anything to anyone. Love never asks you to prove anything to it or to yourself, to anyone. So what makes you think that it becomes more difficult when you love someone to act out of reason? Because love, quite the opposite, tells you, do not sacrifice. I don't ask it of you. If you sacrifice anything for anyone, not because you wanted to, but to prove love, but because they demand it, because they require it from you, then you are in fact out of love. You do not have me. That's what love tells you. So love makes it easier for you to not make sacrifices in the name of someone else, which goes against reason, against justice, against truth, against what is right and proper and real. So, and with everything else, I'm just mentioning sacrifice, but again, all these other things. Love does not ask you to prove. Love does not ask you to judge anyone. Love does not ask you to look down on anyone else or to look down on yourself. Love does not ask you to idolize anyone or anything. In fact, it says the opposite. The more you concentrate me on someone, the less you shall have me. This is why all those people who adore certain people, they're almost like worshiping them, right? They're saying, I love this person and I will do everything for that person. And that very much includes, by the way, cheating, lying, deceiving, stealing, literally anything that this person would require of them. And more often than not, in fact, I would say every single time, those people who are loved the most are then hated the most. Because you're idolizing someone or something that cannot be an idol. It cannot be perfect. It cannot be a God. It will make a mistake. And as soon as someone that you idolize makes a mistake, they fall out of idolatry. They become lesser than an idol. And then you say, you stabbed me in the back. You lied to me. You pretended to be one thing. And now it turns out you're not perfect. You're not like you said you were, or like you thought they were, whatever it may be. Either way, you will get disappointed. That's the point. And so love doesn't require any of those things that care requires. And so whenever we think, though, we are in love, we are of care. And so, in fact, the very last thing we have when we care about someone in this way, the very last thing is love that we have. And so if you want to discuss how care makes it more difficult to be of reason, no problem. That's very clear to you, right? And you wouldn't even have that confusion. You wouldn't even ask that question. But that love makes it harder to be of reason? No way. It makes it easier. In fact, love and reason are tightly related because reason brings you to peace and love is peace. You're not at peace when you're sacrificing. You're not at peace when you're trying to prove something to someone. You're not at peace when you're suffering to show anyone how important they are to you. So love is not peace. Care is not peace, and love is not care. And love makes it easier to reason, to be of reason, and reason makes it easier to be of love, not harder. Does that make sense?
But certainly loving someone implies care. How do we make that distinction between
Loving someone does not require care. Loving someone,
No?
loving
Oh, no.
someone requires that you don't care. So to love
Exactly.
someone is to wish them well. Okay?
Yeah, of course.
And to wish someone well is this, that they know the difference between right and wrong, good and bad, vice and virtue, awareness and unawareness. All these highest, most beautiful, most proper things for a human being. That is love. To wish these things onto someone else is love. And this is how it is possible to love everyone. You see, you cannot romantically love everyone. Impossible. And you wouldn't want to. But in this way,
course.
to wish well, to wish the greatest things a human being can experience and be in the presence of onto someone else, what is more loving than that? So to wish well is actually a much more loving thing to do, both in intensity as well as in quantity. So now you are able to love every single human being on earth and every single thing else. Because even someone who you think is a criminal, is a bad person, is a liar, cheater, deceiver, or a cruel, violent person, even to them you would wish this, no? That they know good from bad, right from wrong, and vice from virtue, and awareness from unawareness. Who would you not wish them onto? In fact, the so-called worse a person, the more they are in need of this, and the more they would benefit from this, and the more we all would benefit. Because there is nothing more beneficial to an aware person than other unaware people becoming aware. And so love in this sense is something that we can do for everyone and will want to do for everyone. And thereby we will exclude no one. We will judge no one, because all it is to wish well. It is not to apply a certain standard, which is what care is. Love does not apply a certain standard. Love is simply a wish. I wish you well. Wherever you are, at whatever stage you are, I wish you well. And so in that sense, I love you. This is the best, most important, most fundamental, highest and most valuable thing you could say and wish onto, more importantly, anyone. Whether this is your romantic partner or a complete stranger. It is the best thing you can do for anyone, including yourself. This is why so many people who are unable to love themselves try to go and love someone else with the expectation that that will fix them too. There's so many people out there, you hear it all the time. They say, I want to learn to love myself by by loving someone else. They think that if they pour love onto someone else, this person is going to pour love onto them and thereby make them worthy of them loving themselves. What a convoluted plan. What a mess.
Mhm.
And then when they pour all this love onto someone with that expectation, which is extremely cruel and selfish if you think about it, and then this other person, either they don't receive enough love from them, or this is the problem. No matter how much love this other person would give you, so-called love, it would never be enough for you because you don't know how to love yourself. And so then you're going to think there's something wrong with that person because they're not able to give you enough love, or the love that you deserve, or the love that you're looking for. And since a romantic partner is supposed to be your only partner, I mean, in case you believe that way, you could never romantically be involved with the entire world at the same time, that's for sure. Then you say, oh, okay, I just picked the wrong partner. And then they move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And they can never do that with every single human being, so they will never realize that it's not them, and that what they're trying to give and receive, it was never love, and they will never know, and they will never love. But this is what love truly is. And so the more you concentrate on someone, the more you can be sure that it is care, not love, because love cannot be concentrated. As soon as you take love and you try to squish it together so that it becomes concentrated, dense enough to give to one person, it will slip out of your hands and it will go away. And you will be out of love. Love will say, I'm out. You are forcing me into something that I am not. And love will not let you do that. Care will let you do that. You can break pieces off of care and you can put them together and you can do whatever you want. You can shape it and give it to someone else. And then, of course, you're going to want them do the same thing in return for you. And if they don't do it, uh-oh. And even if they do it, they're going to have to do it again. One time isn't enough. And the next time better be bigger and better. So on and so forth, until it becomes impossible to show that much care, which was never right to begin with. So when you truly understand what love is, and when you truly love everyone, that's when you can love someone. That's why we always say around here, I didn't invent this, but I certainly partake in it. The idea that you cannot love anyone until you love everyone. And this is what it means to love everyone, to wish everyone well. So once you are able to wish everyone well, you are able to love anyone, yourself or anyone else. And of course, what is the biggest obstacle? And here, as in every kinship moment, I'm warning you, it's about to happen again where everything connects. Okay? The one and only thing that stands between you and the ability to wish everyone well is your anger, is your hatred, is your resentment, is your bitterness, your disappointment, your frustration, your pride. All of the passions, all of the extreme emotions, those are what stand in the way. As soon as you let go of hatred, of resentment, of anger, of pride, of judgment, all these things which are emotions, passions, as well as vices, coincidentally or not so coincidentally, as soon as you let go of them, you are able to wish everyone well. You see it so many times. You say, enemies do not wish each other well. Is there a more obvious thing to say than that? Enemies do not wish each other well. Why? Because they hate each other. They resent each other. And if they would let go of their anger, they think that they would let the other person win. And so they would rather suffer, they would rather never know what love is, including for themselves, and rather keep fighting and struggling and suffering and live a life of agony than to say, anger is destroying me, anger is wrong, and I wish that person well. Because especially, like we said before, if they're wrongdoers, if they're criminal, so-called evil people, especially then I wish them well, because especially then are they in lack of all of those things that would benefit me also, at least in a physical way, right? If all the ignorant, dangerous people that you meet out when you're driving your car out in traffic, if you wish them well and that wish came true, that they finally understand right from wrong, awareness from unawareness, it would be safer for you. Never mind them. But of course, that's mixing the physical and the spiritual again. We don't want to get into that, but you know what I mean. It's just an example. And so this is what love is. So now tell me again that love makes it more difficult to be of reason.
Okay, thank you for clarifying my my concept. Yeah, I think I ought to dive more deep into this kind of concept.
Does that make sense to you, though?
But yeah, it was makes sense.
Is there
Yes, it
something
makes,
that
but
doesn't make sense?
When you say we can love everyone, I won't say that doesn't confuse me because of what you talked about, anger, for example, bitterness, those kind of issues. Like how can we love someone whom we know did us wrong, for example? That's kind of difficult for me to understand. How
Because
can
to
I
love
love
is to wish well.
him?
To love is not to go and give them a kiss. You understand what I'm saying? To love is to wish well.
Okay.
So if this person is a wrongdoer, if this person is a violent person who beat up a child, whatever, you can tell me what the worst thing in your mind a person can do is. Whatever it is, they did it because they were ignorant, because they don't know right from wrong, because they are confused, conflicted individuals. They are in agony. They are in suffering. They are in pain because they don't understand reality and they're trying to fight reality. And they've never learned or have forgotten what right is and what wrong is. They confuse. Every time they think they're doing something right, they're doing something wrong. And every time they punish themselves for doing something wrong, they're actually punishing themselves for having done something right. But they're so unaware, they're so confused. They don't understand anything. They don't know who you are. They don't know what they're really doing. They don't understand what they're doing. And even if they think they know what they're doing, they don't know what they're doing. Because even if they understand that they're being violent to someone else right now, of course, they notice themselves punching someone, for example. But they always think that they're doing it for an end result, an end goal, which makes sense, which is right. And they don't understand that there is no end result that you can achieve that can be good, that comes out of violence. They don't know that. They're ignorant. They think they're doing something good. They think they're avenging their brother. They think they are holding someone responsible who was violent to some innocent person. Whatever their motive might be, they never are aware that they are doing something wrong, at least they think is for something that at the end will prove them right. You see what I mean? Even if the act that they're doing right now, they know is wrong, they're doing it for some supposed good end. They have a plan in their head, in other words. That plan is wrong. That plan is flawed. That plan is mistaken. It will never work. But they don't know that. So when I say they're ignorant, that's what I mean. They might know the particular act that they're engaged in right now is wrong, but they're doing it to some end. They have some kind of plan or other, which is flawed and impossible and is not going to work, but they don't know that. So when you see a person like that, what better is in your interest to do than to wish that they finally understand that they're wrong and that they finally understand what rightness is and what awareness is and unawareness is and what love truly is. That love is not to defend someone. That love is not to get revenge for your girlfriend. This is what you're wishing to a person who is a wrongdoer. And this is how to love a wrongdoer. Does that make sense?
I guess, yeah.
Okay.
But just another point.
Yeah.
Do you think, still on that issue, this is my first time, okay?
No problem.
Do you think that wishing someone well can coexist with what's the word I'm trying to
Take your time.
wishing someone well and I mean, does that imply you being okay with yourself, even being separated from another person? I mean, that wishing well implies how do I say this? Usually, when we like someone, love, let's call it love, we want to be close to that person, but and we at the same time we wish them well. I mean, does wishing them well and wanting to be with them can like coexist?
Of course, it can coexist, but again, only for the right reason. If you cannot wish someone well and be closer to them in order to complete yourself. You can't do that, because now you know what real love is, and that you are always complete, and that you cannot complete yourself with someone else's care and attention, for example. However, you say, well, I want to start a family. Just one of the many reasons. And so, yeah, of course I want to be closer to this person. And then we will together, in this awareness and this understanding what love truly is, what awareness truly is, what thyself, myself truly is. In this understanding, we will raise a family. And again, what better parents than that? For example. And there are other reasons. These are just two examples of how you can wish someone well and want to be closer to them. And also how when you wish someone well, you cannot be closer to them if you have the wrong reason. So this is another gift of understanding what love truly is, or rather, this is the gift, to understand for what reason to do anything, which sounds dangerously close to reason, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
So there might be some realizations there for all of us once we understand what love truly is, to see that, wow, I've been doing certain things that out of this confusion, not out of the true understanding what love really is, and I might have to let those things go. I might have to let those beliefs go, those actions, those behaviors, those things go, whatever they may be, that are misinformed by the confusion of love and care. That might very well be. But as always, truth will set you free. If this is true love, then whatever comes out of it, whatever realization comes out of it, as difficult, as painful as it may be, it will also be the very thing that will set you free, or that will add to your freedom. And so, as we always say, it might not be easy, but it is simple, it is clear, and it is life-changing. And so, of course, just because I'm saying this does not mean that you have to believe any of it. These are, as always, only suggestions, nothing else. And this is not something I came up with. I'm only taking the suggestion of other friends. And so we should each consider them for ourselves, take whatever part of it that makes sense to us, that shows up in experience, and that truly furthers us, not just intellectually makes sense, but shows up in experience and really changes things for the better, of course. Take those parts and leave the rest. Right? And add your own, or take none of it, or take all of it, whatever it is. That's the work of life, to look at it and to take none or up to all of it. That's the work of life also. It's another way of saying it. Okay?
Okay, thank you for your insights. They were very helpful.
Yeah, and thank you for that
I
question.
think
I think that was, Yeah, sorry, go ahead. I didn't want to cut you off. I think there's a delay.
It's love is a strong word, and it can bring with it some confusion, some
Yeah, love as a
things
word,
which get
certainly, as you said, is one of the most misused, overused words ever. And so, but as with everything else, we need to find our own personal connection, our own personal understanding of each and every single concept, which words only are the signifiers of, right?
Okay. Thank you for your insights once again.
Thank you very much for your question and everything you said. I think it was a very valuable discussion to me, certainly, and I hope to others as well. And so I will move you back to the audience. Thank you very much. And I hope you think about it. And again, take whatever part or no part of it, and that maybe in days, weeks, months that are coming, that maybe something happens and you further develop the idea, or you see if you can implement it or not. And then you might grace us with the insights that you might gain from that. And so in that way, I hope to hear from you again if these things continue in your head and you come to certain ideas that you would like to share. No expectations, of course. And we have one more speaker, but I am out of time. I'm sorry. Because we have a new question of the week that I want to talk about. And so that one speaker that we have, please put in your request in first the next time so that I can get to you first. I really don't like leaving speakers there. But you know, it has to be done. And I do hope that I get to talk to you first thing next time. And so, as always, we've come to the end of another question of the week, which they go for 2 weeks. So it's a little misleading. Maybe you come up with a better name for these. But so this was the second week of our question, which is more important, intention or outcome? And as always, I want to give you a new one. And as always, this week, I'm only going to pose the question and say nothing about it, pretty much. So that next week, we can just gather responses and thoughts around this question. And then at the end of next week, I will also give my thoughts and responses, just like everyone else in that next meeting. And the week after that is sort of to sit with those insights that we gathered from everyone and to think of the question in that way, because that way we're mixing our insights with others. We have received things that we never would have thought of ourselves, perhaps, and we're giving others the things that we thought of. So that's a great opportunity for us to yet again, in a different way, to see what that question does for us and all the new ways of vision that it gives to us. So the new question of the week is, how has your personality benefited you? How has your personality benefited you? And I will, of course, put this question in the question of the week channel so that you can respond to it there. I encourage everyone, as when the questions are posted there, to start talking. I mean, you don't have to wait till kinship. Maybe the particular insight or the thoughts that you're having are more suited for the chat, because there you can respond to each other's. Here in the kinship meetings, we can only talk to one person at a time. And also, don't forget of the past questions of the week. They're always open. Just because they're not the question of the week anymore doesn't mean that they're irrelevant. I tried to pick questions that are not only relevant this week, but every week of our lives technically. Why not? And so you can always start or restart a discussion for any of the questions of the week, past or present. And I encourage you to do so. As you see, we saw from one of our speakers today, by engaging with this kind of discussion, whether with other people or with oneself through journaling or through just thinking, one receives all the answers one was ever looking for. I always say, and I will say it again, if you dedicate yourself to your personal exploration of timeless and universal ideas, you will find the answers to all the questions you ever had. You will find your own unique answers to all the questions you ever had and ever could have. It really is true. This is the one thing I'm certain of. I'm not certain how. I'm not certain how long it will take. But I am certain that if you dedicate yourself, you will come up with your own unique answers to all of the questions you ever had. And so reading in the right way, journaling in the proper way, and discoursing in this particular way, as we are doing here in the Kinships and in the chat channels and everywhere else, is the method of the work of life, and in a way, the work of life itself. Yet another way of saying it. So I thank you, everyone, for being here as always. Once again, very special, but not surprising at all, Kinship, that we have had these amazing, I would say life-changing discussions and insights that we were able to pass around. It happens every day. It happens every time, somehow. That's the most amazing thing. And this is because of our kinship together. It is not because of one particular person, but because of all of us and because of our proper intentions. This is the outcome of a proper intention. Not because the intention was proper, but because it happened to be that way. And so this is our intention. This is the intention we live here every time we come here. And as long as we have the right intentions, truly, I tell you, nothing can happen to you. Nothing. And everything that happens to you will be right and proper, and you yourself will not suffer. Everyone else might come to you and say, I'm so sorry that you're in such a bad way. And you will not even know what they're talking about.